Hi, welcome to episode 7 of the Wild Learners channel. So I know a lot of you probably missed my live video because it wasn't working on YouTube, even though I did like a dry run and everything went well. So it ended up having to be live on Facebook, and I know a lot of you missed it. So what I thought I'd do today is go in a little bit deeper on what we talked about during that live stream, and that's play-based learning. So if that's something that interests you, I encourage you to stick around, hit the like button, and subscribe to this channel. So play-based learning is something that I'm really passionate about as an educator. It's something that I heard a lot about in college, that we did a lot of studying on, especially in connection with like early childhood learning. But it's not something that I really got to practice when I was in public school settings. And it's something that I think really benefits more than just our early childhood learners. I think it's something that really helps our middle elementary students, and I think it's something that really helps our middle schoolers and high schoolers as well. So today I'm going to be talking about play-based learning. I'm going to be talking about where it came from, the types of play-based learning, and even give some examples that I do here in my classroom with play-based learning. So we're going to go ahead and get into that now, and we're going to start talking about like what is play, right? When we think about play, we kind of get these ideas of like maybe things we did as children, or we can reflect and look at things that either our own children are doing or our students are doing. And a lot of those things that come to mind, maybe like make-believe play, like dressing up, trading roles, like role play. So like that's where your like house comes in, or doctor, or store, or things like that. And I think the play is really beneficial because play is how children make sense of the world, right? Children use play to take information that they've been collecting or things that they've observed and actually practice it themselves. Play is also important because we see that it helps develop cognitive skills. It helps kids develop socially. It helps kids develop physically. We also see a difference in children who are allowed free play versus kids that aren't, and even their mental health. So play is really, really important, and I don't think that enough people really emphasize play outside of early childhood. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of kids getting burned out, not choosing to go to higher education, and we see a lot of kids really losing interest in school, and that has to change. Like our culture on education, our pedagogies have to change if we're going to keep these kids interested, if we're going to keep them wanting to learn, and really see higher level problem solving skills in our students. Some other benefits of play that I can think of is that it also helps them build a sense of community. And community is something that you really want in your classrooms, or even at home if you're homeschool with your own family, because community really helps set like a standard of expectations. And I think that the best way that kids learn or decide that they want to work on something is through intrinsic motivation, and community can actually help create that. I think that play also helps build their self-confidence because, like I said, they're really just practicing the skills or ideas that they picked up on or learned or observed, and being able to practice those on a regular basis in a safe environment really helps build their confidence in being able to do those skills. I think it also helps them engage in new experiences. So, you might not be a doctor, but if your child is interested in that kind of stuff, as playing doctor, they might actually be able to get a deeper love for that and want to become a doctor. So one area that I see this a lot in, honestly, is art and music. Now, unfortunately, we all know that a lot of schools are taking out funding for these things, or if they are doing art and music, they're on a very basic level, which is fine for some kids, but some kids really excel in the arts. And I think the arts are just as important as other subject areas. But for example, most children love to draw. I won't say all children, but most children love to draw. They love to create things. And if you look at that as just like play, you may not see the value of it. But if you look at the play on a deeper level and you see that while they're playing, while they're drawing, while they're using different art manipulatives, they're really building skills. They're learning different techniques, and this may lead to somebody being an amazing artist someday. Same with music. Most of the people that I know that are amazing musicians are self-taught, and it started out as like play, just something they were interested in. But through that play, they developed a love, they developed a skill, and now they're really accomplished musicians because they pursued that, because they were able to play. They were able to build that love in the first place. So I think that in and of itself should show the importance of play for children and maybe even adults, right? I also think that play is really important because it helps foster creativity, and we just don't have enough of that right now. I think that we live in such a unique time with our digital access and with AI technology. Kids are just always being given information, but they're not always given the opportunity to take that information and create something new, or create their own ideas, or really think about it on a level that is individual. And that play really allows them to do those things. I think that it also obviously helps encourage imagination, and imagination is directly linked to having higher level problem solving skills. So if they can think outside the box, or they can think very abstractly about things, a lot of times you're going to see higher scores in your math and your sciences, and because they're able to really create and think for themselves without being told what to do step by step. So play really gives children the autonomy over their learning. I think that it also helps enrich learning experiences, again, through practicing skills, by also having inquiry, like inquisitions while they're playing, and being able to answer those questions for themselves through their play. It helps with their expression, as we talked about with social interactions. Play can even lead towards experimentation. So, like mixing different colors or building things. It really teaches them important, valuable life skills as well. And I think that play also helps with teamwork. And like I said, I think the teamwork and the community thing kind of go together with this day and age, and that children are becoming more and more isolated. And I think that that's a big reason why we're seeing this uptick in youth harm. And I think that this is a lot of times due to like social media. I mean, we can interact with each other without being face to face, or like really collaborating and working together. But as humans, we really need that. Like, we have a deep desire to have that, and they can achieve that through play. And so I think that it's really important. And we're gonna get into the next part of our video, now that I've kind of shared why I think play is important, and I hope you see the value in that too. But our next part of our video is really be going into the modern pedagogies of play, where play kind of got its origins, and talking about the different styles of play. So I know a lot of the forest school teachers that follow me, and a lot of the homeschool families that follow me will probably be familiar with some of these. And I know some of my teacher friends might be more familiar with others. So we're going to talk about the two main sources of our modern day definition of play. So there's a lot more, because a lot of people have done a lot of studies on play. But there are two, I'd say two sources that are probably make the strongest arguments for play, and that really have gone down in depth, and where a lot of teachers or educators or even homeschool families have really taken their ideas and formed their pedagogies based on these. So the first one I want to talk about is Montessori. So Montessori was created by Maria Montessori, and she really believed that play was work. Play is the work of children. If you've ever watched Fred Rogers, I loved Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood growing up. You could tell, like, even then, he used a lot of play as a teaching tool through his, puppetry and just the way that he interacted with his audience. And I see a lot of that in the Montessori method of play as work. So Montessori does have a lot of its own toys or, you know, manipulatives to use for like math and stuff that are play-based. But a lot of those you can make on your own or even use different ones as well. I'm not a purist when it comes to Montessori. I love the pedagogy behind it, but I, as a teacher and as a mom, don't have that kind of money to go buy like pure Montessori type things. Some things I have, like abacuses and things like that, but for a lot of it I supplement other types of play that are really similar. And I've done a lot of student teaching in Montessori, and I've read a lot of Montessori, and I love the Montessori method. And I think that Maria Montessori makes a great observation from her time about how children really use that as a role play, as a model for how to interact with each other, how to really develop and put these skills that they're learning into like everyday practice. And I think that's where a lot of schools are having a lot of disconnect, because we've gone to like a lot of online learning. We have a lot of like worksheets, and so kids like it's almost become busy work. Like they just want to try to get this done, this very abstract thing, but it has no real life application. And so play lends itself to that. So I shared in my live video one example of this was my class loves role play. They love imaginary play, and that's like kindergarten all the way through my like fourth grader. The fourth grader is my daughter, so my fourth grade daughter interacts, and I have a multi-age classroom, which I love because it introduces a lot of different levels for kids that are interacting together. So the smaller kids are learning from the big kids, and the big kids are even learning from the smaller kids, so it really creates a better community for us of learning. But one of the things they like to do, so at the end of last school year we learned about money, and so I had purchased like fake money and got like a little cash box for it and everything. And that's just part of our toys that they can play with during free play. And I did not encourage this, I did not discourage this, I just allowed it to happen. But they created their own store, and through this they had to decide who was going to do what roles, kind of like the rules around this play. And then they were practicing using money because they were purchasing things, having to make change. And for them it was fun because they're playing. It's felt very informal. It didn't feel like a test because it wasn't on paper, but they were still like practicing those skills and doing it more efficiently, I would argue, than like sitting at a table looking at a sheet of paper. They got to see where those values of knowing how to make change or count money is going to be important for adulthood. So it makes that work that they're doing more appealing to them because they know that they're going to be using it or can use it. And I think that that's really valuable. I know as an adult, I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on something that I don't think I'm going to use or isn't of interest for me. So part of our jobs as educators or homeschool moms is to let our children know, like, this is valuable, you do need this, and showing that to them so that they can take autonomy over that and be like, yes, I need to know this, I'm going to practice this, and I'm going to build this skill in my own life. And I think that that's really important. The second person who really put a lot of research and theories into play-based learning was Piaget. And if you're an educator, if you took any kind of child development or child psychology, you know about Piaget. And Piaget really talks a lot about how play benefits in cognitive development. And again, it just kind of links back. He uses a lot, more scientific terms than Maria Montessori did. But they both were saying the exact same thing. Play is practice of the skills that they are learning, and that play not only builds those skills, helps with practice, helps them model the correct way to socialize or interact with one another, but it also puts all that information into long-term memory. So a lot of times, if you look at research, if they're doing data or online learning, they may have a short-term memory of what they did, but it's not going into their long-term memory. So that's why you see that you have to do so much reteaching of things, or you're trying to integrate that throughout a certain period of time to make sure they're retaining it. But you don't have to put that much work into it if they're doing it as play, because it does go into their long-term memory a lot quicker than if you're using a worksheet or something similar. So those are the two main, I would say, people or sources that people really got this idea of play-based learning. Again, a lot of Piaget's has to do with like early childhood, but I make an argument that we really need to start doing this for our upper elementary kids, our middle schoolers, and high schoolers as well. And that's because we kind of expect kids at a certain age, and I'd say that is like the end of second grade, to all of a sudden be able to just turn off almost like their childhood and just become like little adults and be able to sit for longer periods of time. That's also when they're getting introduced to I read and I learn, like all that stuff starts in the third grade, and there's just so much pressure on these children. And I think that we have really diverted from that as a culture, because I think that No Child Left Behind really started a lot of that. But I think that we also just keep hitting these expectations on kids, and I'm not saying those expectations are wrong. So here at my school, we do follow the Indiana state standards. My kids are expected to master those as a homeschool mom. And I think that disconnect, so the kids that are not able to reach those standards, I don't think it's so much of they can't, and so I think that a lot of kids are probably in special education services that really don't need it, because we've taken away play. We have taken away free choice. We have taken away autonomy, and these kids are just burnt out. They're tired, they're bored, they don't want to do the work. They have lost the fun that was learning. And I think that if we reintroduce play, if we make learning interesting and actually applicable to their daily life, and show them the value of what they're learning, we could really change how engaged they are. And engagement has everything to do with learning. If they're not engaged, it's not going into long-term memory. It's not going to be a valuable learning experience. So we're going to spend so much time reteaching it and reiterating, lessons so that they hopefully get it. And that's not the case with play. With play, they get it. It goes long-term memory. They have it stored. They see the value of it. And I think that it's really important that we get back to that. I think that it's important that we our 90-minute reading blocks don't have to look like whole group instruction, and then like everybody, in these small groups, like working at their desk. I think that there needs to be a lot more movement. As humans, we are supposed to move. I know as an adult, I literally could not sit in a third grade classroom and be productive. And I don't take any ADHD medicine. I'm just a busy person. I believe in movement. I think that having play allows for free movement. And there's a way that you can have them do play and still be on task. But it allows them to have that break from sitting at their desk, staring at a paper, and it definitely makes learning more engaging. So we're going to kind of go into now that we've talked about play, who's really behind the play-based theories. I want to talk about the 5 different types of play and the way that you can implement them into your homeschool or classroom so that it's beneficial, so that it's on task, so it meets standards, because I know that's important for those of you in public schools, and really the benefits of all these different types of play. So we're going to get into the 5 different types of play. You can make an argument for more, but I'd say these are the 5 main types of play. I'm going to talk about what they are, how you can implement them in your classroom and still have them be productive, have them meet the standard, and be staying on task. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right into this. So the first category of play that I think is probably the most obvious is going to be physical play. So physical play is where you see kids outside, that's your running, your jumping, tree climbing, that type of play. And physical play, I would almost argue, is the most important, especially in today's society where we are seeing that kids are getting less and less outside time. And I think that the pandemic a couple years ago maybe has started to kind of change people's opinion of outside. And I really hope so, because there's so many benefits to being outside. And physical play is directly connected to our health. And so having healthy kids means that they are going to be able to be in class more. They're going to be able to retain information better because they're not worried about, being sick or missing school and things like that. Physical play is also important because it helps them with coordination and fine motor skills, and that's especially important for your younger students who are, still developing the bones in their fingers, and being able to hold pencils and crayons. All that stuff can start with outside play by picking up sticks, sorting rocks. Having to pick up things and manipulate them really helps with further learning. The second one that I see is social play. So social play is where they are really interacting with each other directly. So an example of social play would be your store, where everybody has a role and they're interacting and working together. Social play could also be like they're dressing up like as, princesses or cops and robbers, or, that type of play where everybody has a role and they're kind of like figuring these roles out and talking to each other. So that's going to be your social play. So constructive play is going to be the third type of play that I see, and constructive play is just what it sounds. It's constructing. And I think that constructing play is probably one of the more common ones I see being chosen during our free play. So that can be, using clay or Play-Doh to make or construct something, using blocks, Legos. A big favorite of ours, because I have a really bad Amazon problem, is using Amazon boxes to build like a fort, or, we had an airport the other day where they took the boxes apart and drew lines on them and like made an airport. So that's gonna be your constructive play, where they're actually building something. I think that the other side of that is really important too, in the destruction of things. So even my older kids, like my second, third, and fourth graders, love to destroy whatever they built. And I think that that's actually really important. There's a lot of, I personally don't feel like destructive play lends itself to negative behaviors. I think that we can see destruction from kids that are maybe suffering from some type of emotional issue that they can't regulate. But for the most part, kids like to build things and then tear them down as part of that process of seeing how to build it and then seeing it come apart. There's something satisfying about it, and I would say that even adults find some joy in deconstruction. The fourth type of play is fantasy play. So again, this goes with your role play and dress up, but this might be a play where the rules are a little bit more fluid, where they'd be willing to compromise on what maybe powers or abilities they have, or maybe I see a lot more collaboration in the fantasy play than maybe even just the like store type role play where there's set clear conditions and boundaries. So I see a lot of fantasy play when especially when we read a book. So this is probably the best example I can give. If we read a book together every day. I really believe in read alouds, and this is why. So when we do a read aloud, I always do the voices and I make it really fun because I want them to really engage and really take that text to self connection. And I see that they do almost every time, because right after our reading time is when we have our 3 hours of outside time. And I see them really reenacting whatever it is we just read out there and retelling it either closely to the book or completely making up their own story, but using the same characters or the same components of the story they just heard. And so fantasy play is really important because they're reinforcing what we just learned from the story. They're applying that into their own scenario, so it's getting put in that long-term memory. So those values of whatever we just read is really being reinforced, and I think that that's more valuable than a worksheet, and that's exactly what I'm trying to accomplish as a teacher. The fifth type of play is structured play, and so I do think that structured play does have its benefits. So I believe that student-centered play, where it's student-led, the teacher is letting them have total control over their play is really important, but I understand that that can't be 100% of the time. So what I try to do when I need them to do a specific task, I want to maybe do like an informal assessment on like whether they are understanding content. What I might do is have a play-based center. So the center is going to be directed on a specific task, but I try to make it more play-based. So a lot of times that's going to be like for math. I'll try to give like a math example here. For my 4th grade student, she's learning long division, and it's something that I can tell that she's been a little bit frustrated with, and I don't want her to develop a mental block or feel like she's incapable of doing it. So we'll maybe work on like 1 or 2 together for now, while she's still trying to develop this skill. And then what I have her do is then she does a math center, and it's play, and it's a game that I found on Teachers Pay Teachers, and it's called Remainders Wanted. And it's kind of like a dice game, and she loves board games, so it works out really well. Like, she really enjoys it, and she really gets into the game, and it really becomes less of, oh, I'm doing division, and it's more of like trying to play this game. So that's an example of what a structured play could be. I'm kind of choosing what I want them to focus on or what kind of outcome I'm wanting. So that's going to be structured. Unstructured play, you don't have any expectations of what students are doing or what they are focusing on or like what they're even learning. You're letting them make those choices for themselves. I think that free play is really important. My students in particular get quite a bit of choice in their free play, and I have not been disappointed. I know it can sound kind of scary at first because you might think, well, you know, we're really struggling on this. We need to spend more time on this. I really feel like if you step back, do your whole group lesson, step back and let them play, let them have choice on what they're doing, you're going to see that they're going to be more interested in whatever you're teaching, and you're not going to have to spend all that time reteaching it or even trying to get them back on task. I can't tell you how much time was wasted when I was a public school teacher just trying to keep kids on task because, like, well, we had to do, you know, the curriculum. I didn't have a choice. I had to, you know, use this book, and even though it was boring and it wasn't at the level that some of my kids were, you know, you try to make accommodations, but there's only so many accommodations you can make on a piece of paper that, you know, the whole class is doing, other than maybe give them a separate piece of paper. Whereas play kind of lets them explore the boundaries of their abilities a little bit more. And what I found is if they are able to set their own boundaries, they're gonna set them high. They might start out kind of shy, like with their play, but I think as you develop this and it becomes a daily ritual, you'll see that they want to push themselves to be able to do more. Especially if you have multi-age classroom like I do, I see a lot of my younger kids wanting to do or have the knowledge that my older kids have. And they pick up on that fairly quickly from learning from their peers through play, faster than I could ever teach them, because it's something that's interesting. They made the choice to do it versus me telling them. So I think that it's really important to allow that time in your classroom. As far as how much time, I think that that's really up to an individual basis and kind of like your own situation. So obviously, If you are a homeschool mom, you have a lot more autonomy over what your classroom day looks like. In public school, I mean, it can be a lot harder because there's that there's that expectation of having, your 90-minute reading block, your 60-minute math block, and what those should look like within different districts. And it can be really hard to try to, or at least I found it extremely difficult when I was in public school, to convince administration to deviate from what they kind of set as what that time should look like. But now that I don't have that anymore, I'll kind of give you some examples of what I've seen in my experiences and what I see here with the children that I have. And for early childhood, the general consensus from different education websites that promote play-based learning, and just from my own experience, for early childhood, they need 2 or more hours of unstructured play a day. And for elementary, that stays about the same. For middle school, the recommendation is an hour or more during the school day. So this is all during the school day, because you'd be like, oh, well, they get 2 or 3 hours after school. Most kids don't, because they have chores, they have after school activities, parents are still working, dinner, everything like that. I'm talking like these hours should be part of your school day. So I obviously understand that I have a much smaller class. I no longer have a class of like 32 kindergartners with no aid, which made play-based learning a lot harder. That's not my situation anymore, and I understand that. So I can do a lot more unstructured play because I have a smaller group to manage. But I think that if we can really get school districts to see the value of play and start using their aids differently, maybe not so much like for one-on-one instruction, but to allow for this free play time or even extended recess time, I think that we would see a huge difference in the academic capabilities of our students. We definitely see an increase in the positive on their mental health. And I think we'd see a lot more students staying in school. We wouldn't see all these kids leaving high school. We see a lot more kids pursuing higher education because that love of learning is still there. Something that I've always said in like all my videos, and you're probably tired of hearing it, but like having a growth mindset, that is a lifelong skill. That's something that we want even adults to still maintain. I'm a lifelong learner. I love learning. If I could afford it, I'd be in college now taking classes, because there's always something that I want to dig into deeper. Theories and practices are always changing and developing, so I try to stay current with all of those. And so I really have that love of learning, and I think it's because I was able to, I love school, so I'm one of those people that enjoyed school, but I also think it's because I was allowed a lot of free play as a child. I was allowed to be outside for hours at a time, and I think that's where I really developed my love of the outdoors and developed a lot of skills that way. I think we'd see a lot more children doing that if they were allowed to have that within the school setting. And again, just being able to have that break, right? I know as a teacher, our recesses were supposed to be like 20 or 25 minutes. They never got that, because by the time everybody finished their lunch, got their lunch trays, there, and then got outside. In the summertime, maybe they'd get like 15, 20 minutes. In the winter, it was like a joke. It was like 10 or 15 minutes, because by the time they ate their lunch and then got all their snow gear on, if you were lucky enough to have students that had snow gear, they got outside and they were really just starting to get into that interesting, intricate play when we had to come back inside. And it just isn't a long enough of a break for them to really decompress and be ready for learning again. An example of how I view this is as an adult, especially when I was a teacher, but I can think of this in like other fields that I was in, like in high school or even like college jobs. My lunch break, I'd hardly ever even eat. Sometimes I would eat while I was reading or sketching or something like that. And I can't tell you, like, there are times where we'd be slammed and I wouldn't get my lunch break until like maybe the hour that I'm supposed to clock out. And those days I was so drained. I wanted to quit. It was like so burnt out, tired, exhausted. I went home grumpy, things like that. On days that I was able to get my scheduled break when I was supposed to, I was able to take that break, have some time to decompress, self-reflect, and I was able to go back to work and actually be far more productive than I was on the days where I was just plowing through and working constantly. And I don't understand why as a culture we have different expectations for students than we even have for adults. We're expecting students to eat like their lunch prison style in like 15 minutes and then get like a 10-minute recess break and then come back in and start in with the grind again. And these are children these are people, yes, they're children that are learning to still self-regulate, that have been proven that they need movement and physical activity, they need play, and they're not getting those things. And yet we're wondering why, academic performance has dropped so much. I really don't think it has anything to do with the pandemic. I don't think the pandemic helped a lot because, virtual learning is a whole nother topic we could get into. But I think a lot of it's because as a culture we have become expectant of children to do things that we wouldn't even expect adults. Adults have these rights in place where they can get frequent breaks. If we're tired, a lot of us can take a day off and focus on something that we're interested in. And that's not the case for kids. And I think that we really need to think about the whole child in our learning environments. I think that content's really important. The way we teach content, the way we present it, the way they interact with content, all those things are important. But those things don't matter if the child isn't ready for the content. And most children aren't ready for the content because they're not getting a break. They're not getting to be creative. They're not getting to practice it. And so for them, this just feels like work, like busy work. And they have no buy-in, and play really provides that. So I hope that this helps you realize how much you need to incorporate play into your learning environments. I hope that encourages you to go out onto the interwebs and really do some research for yourself. Read the data out there. There's so much data out there. There's so much data, which is why I don't understand why we still haven't done it. So go do that for yourself. If there's something that you'd like for me to talk about next week, I'd love to hear your ideas. Make sure you comment below and let me know them, and I can definitely do a video on that. I think we'll be doing one here soon about, like I said, we spend hours at a time outside every day, and with winter coming in Indiana, sometimes there's some logistics to that, and I think that's what we'll be talking about in our next video. But make sure you like and subscribe, and it was good to see all of you. I hope you're all are doing well, and I will see you in our next video. Bye.